Hey everyone, Gill here. I have some very exciting news. I'm starting a new tennis show, another venture, this one with two incredible partners, Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, two outstanding tennis journalists, and we're doing a show specifically focused on discussions about the big three. This video is the first episode of that show, but this is very important. I will only post the first 3 episodes of 3 on this YouTube channel. After that, it's moving on over exclusively on the channel specifically dedicated to 3. So I'll put the link in the description. Please do subscribe. I'll also put a button at the end of this video that you can subscribe to the other channel. And again, after the first 3 episodes, I will not be posting this show on this channel. So our first episode is about a man who didn't quite make the title of the show. We're talking about Andy Murray, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Welcome to 3, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. I'm Gill, host of Monday Match Analysis with two outstanding tennis journalists, Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, and this is the first episode of our show where, although it's a show about the big 3, we're going to talk about a guy who was considered to be in the big 4, right? There were some years there where you would call it a big 4, correct?
Yeah, there was some, well.
Never,
No,
Amy.
Never in Amy's mind. Never. Look at Amy. Never.
Well, I mean, you of all people, Joel, you've got to have historical perspective. I mean, Boris Becker won 6, Andy's won 3. It just, I know we're talking about current, but as time goes on, you realize that Andy, while an amazing human being who does these really cool things and has a mom who's like a superstar, talk about the big 3 of moms, is Judy Murray. But you realize the separation and that Andy is just going to go down probably as a great player.
Oh no, he won't be. It won't be the big 4 now. But you go back to the middle of the journey. You go back to 2012. Murray beats Novak in the U.S. Open final, wins his first major. You go back to 2013. Murray beats Novak in the Wimbledon final. Murray is making a statement for it becoming the big 4, and it's being discussed as a notional concept. And then what happens is the other 3 each felt him a little bit in their tail, and they just kind of got yet better. I think Novak most of all, because there was a moment there, 2012-13, we were starting to see some of the physical challenges that Nadal was facing. Federer, from 2012 to 2017, didn't win a major. So Murray finished the year number 1 in 2016. So there were statements Murray made in 12, 13, 16 that might this be the big 4, but I think when you look at it now from relief, from this vantage point, you see, it's kind of funny. Not quite as inventive as Federer, though Murray has an inventive quality to him. Not quite, certainly not as physical as Nadal, and not quite as kind of dialed in as Novak. I watched I was there when Novak beat Murray in the French Open final in 2016 on the court, and you could see Murray has a broader set of imaginative tools. I mean, to get back to our platform, maybe about playing the game, Murray's got some interesting little tricks in his bag that Novak, he's a great volleyer. He's got a lot of neat things. However, his core competencies aren't as good as Novak. So Novak, it reminds me a little bit of when history, Bjorn Borg, Guillermo Vilas. And Vilas had some shot making, some lefty things, some spark, and Murray shows some of that too. But when you get back to the core blocking and tackling, and Novak, he ended up just kind of, you just really can't do enough to praise the way Novak Djokovic has continued to kind of invest in his R&D and improvement, and doing it amid the 2 titans in Federer and Nadal, as well as the Murray, who's really, really good.
Oh, he's so, I mean, I'll probably get skewered for this, but he's so smart. And of the 4, he's probably the smartest.
You mean smart? Is smart for what? Smart for?
He's quick, quick in the head, on the court, off the court. He figures out a way to win. He outthinks his opponents. he just has an incredible command out there. You know, off the court, he would never do something like Novak just did. You know, he's just too socially aware. But sometimes it's better not to have all that, I think. And as aware as Murray was of everything going on the court, he was also probably aware of the skills that he didn't have. So I would call him a very smart, almost overachiever. And yet at the same time, he still can't hang with the three.
Well, actually, I got one for you, Amy. You covered the Atlanta Braves, a great baseball team in their heyday, and they had a tremendous pitching staff. And so in a way, is Murray kind of like a fantastic third starter? You know, it's like a baseball team. Sometimes a pitching rotation has one or two guys who are just kind of like, they are the aces, you know, like way back. This is even before I was born. The Dodgers had Koufax and Drysdale, and they were winning 20, 22 games a year plus. But then there's that third starter who
it's in the Braves rotation. You had Smoltz and Glavine and Maddox, and then they always had that amazing fourth starter like Avery. Maybe he's the Avery, but the difference is that Murray will be a Hall of Famer.
Well, they're different sports, but but in a way, Murray, you know, the history of tennis has this. Vitas Gerulaitis at one point was the only people better than him were Jimmy Connors, Bjorn Borg, and John McEnroe. And so Vitas was kind of like the best of the rest. And I think what history will tell us, and I'll wrestle someone to the ground, a standard rinker friend to the ground of this, is there's no question in the Federer, Nadal, Djokovic era, the guy closest to them, better than all the others, was Andy Murray. More than
That's
standard.
It. I think you hit the nail on the head, because what Murray had in common with Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic is he beat everyone else. I never got the sense in the first round of a major and the second round of a major that Murray was more likely to get upset by, you know, world number 50 through 120 when compared with the other three. Murray beat everyone else with incredible consistency.
And he beat the other three at majors. He has wins over every one of those guys at majors. So,
but losing overall head-to-heads to all three. Federer, it's close.
Yeah, Federer's close, but and that gets into matchups and certain kind of things. And I think you got him and Novak. You know, they're peers. They're born a week apart, and you've got Novak who says pretty much with everything you can do, I can kind of do better, particularly in the core ground stroke ways. I mean, when I watch that French final, seeing them play, you see a lot of the points go the same way. A lot of the points, there's a lot of cross court down the line, a lot of grinding.
Would you say that I always take the Djokovic forehand over the Murray forehand with a fair bit of distance. And I think that's major because, Joel, you've talked about Murray's inventiveness and his feel for the geometry of the court. I agree with you. He really does do very clever things to create offense. But the fact that he has to resort to that is a bit of a burden for him. I don't think he has the same kind of weaponry off the ground that the other three do.
No, that's exactly right. The backhand, pretty darn good. But again,
yes.
The forehand, and again, like a teacher told me, had a choice between a big forehand and a big backhand. Take the big forehand. And Novak, while his forehand is as big as Federer's and Nadal, but you see the work Novak has put to make it better, and the way he used it. There's a physicality to Novak that he's added to his forehand. And Murray, he had some technical and mental limitations, some things he doesn't. Technically, some of it he can't do. You know, and Judy Murray told me an interesting thing once. Growing up in Scotland, there weren't as many technical teachers. So a lot of Judy Murray's instruction and tennis education was filtered through tactics. Judy Murray told me once 3 things she tells everyone. She works with everyone, and that includes 10-year-olds. She says, make trouble, avoid trouble, get out of trouble. And you could see from a very early age, Andy Murray had this tactical mind, the gears clicking, like, how do I make this guy do what he doesn't want to do? I mean, that's why I think, Amy, I brought up the third and you brought up the fourth starter. Like the guy, I don't quite have the fastball. I may not even have the slider. So I got to just, and it's not a junk ball pitcher, but it's like I got to just be a little more versatile here.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one who lobs and, drop shots and, hits the overhead and clever. That's a good way to describe him.
But there's also a brute athleticism, and I think, Joel, you correctly pointed out he's not as physical as Nadal, because nobody is. But I've always appreciated Andy Murray's willingness to suffer, and that, which is really a Nadal idiom, but I think it applies to Murray as well.
Murray in Spain, remember, Murray took time to grow his game. He's also 6'3". You know, he's not David Ferrer, but I don't think of him as playing like big, like Nadal. You see Nadal on TV, you see Nadal in person, it's like this guy will run you right over.
Right. So the willingness to suffer combined with his incredible consistency. I mean, anytime Murray made an unforced error, you kind of flinched because it was so rare. That is a incredibly powerful combination against everyone on tour. And I think the big three, they just had that plus more. And that was the big issue for Andy. But I think that's interesting that you mentioned Spain, because Murray, came along in this era of tennis where, the rallies got longer and they got tougher, and he was really up to the task.
But Gill, you're talking about him like he's in the past. He had. Do you know something we don't know?
No, you're right.
No, well, remember, a year and a half ago, Murray thought he was good. Remember, Murray,
I retired.
I was at that match in Australia where it was thought that it was going to be his last match. And then he had the surgery. And speaking, talk about suffering.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Did you guys see the documentary that he did? What was it called? It was on Amazon.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, yes, it's on Amazon Prime. It is a documentary about Andy Murray's recovery from hip surgery, and a lot of suffering. Can confirm a lot of suffering in that.
I got something that's interesting on Murray. It's funny. Murray's the one who most arrived with what I'll call the cultural agenda, because the British hope, the Fred Perry drought, all the hopes of a nation. And I remember, God, and I know working how many things I've written in television and in print about the possibility of Andy Murray at least achieving the breakthroughs. He had a lot of external cultural baggage attached to him. And yet now that the mission is accomplished, he has, compared to the other three, far less of that around him. It's pretty much business with Andy Murray. I don't mean he's business-like. I just mean it's pretty much the tennis and his life. He doesn't, like you said, he doesn't commit faux pas around, get himself into trouble around certain statements or things. He's not, he doesn't have the halo worldwide that someone like Federer has. It's fun. There's a certain no-nonsense quality to him that's very appealing.
Yeah, I think the documentary is called Resurfacing. It was the double entendre with the hip. So he may resurface, after all this. He may, I know he had some injury recently, but he may, come back and win a slam, surprise us all.
The fact that he won Antwerp last fall was incredibly impressive. I mean,
that was an effort, yeah.
Yeah, he beat Wawrinka in that tournament, if my memory serves me, and he looked really good. So it will be interesting to see if Andy Murray writes a new chapter, which is filled with success. He's talked about he has a new perspective on who he is as an athlete, because I think he said, look, I took a lot of stuff for granted. I traveled the world and I never took the time to appreciate what my life is until I had to step away.
Well, we'll see how many museum trips these guys make now that they have this new perspective, and how many cafes and youth hostels they stay at too.
Regarding the pandemic, though, just back to the big three, it's interesting to me that each of the three of them had a different sort of experience and take on this whole thing. First, you had Federer, who really didn't need to do anything or say anything outrageous or opinionated because he was injured. So it was kind of a non-starter. And then you had Nadal, who was the very everyone socially distanced. Let's take this seriously. I may not play the US Open. At least that's what Uncle Tony says, because I'm worried. And then you had Djokovic, who wasn't worried at all. It was just sort of let it. So it's interesting to me that the three of them had a completely different take throughout this whole thing.
Tennis, it's great, man. That's one of the great things about the sport. I mean, it's so funny. I guess every endeavor has its strength and weakness all in once. And one of the things I love about tennis is this whole capacity for self-expression, individualism. This is a sport like you play tennis so you don't have someone telling you what to do. So there you are. You get to just kind of and think of the singularity and the self-reliance that builds even in civilians like us, and then you ramp that up exponentially times 10, and you're on the top of the world. I mean, it's a pretty interesting sense of ego development, and I mean that in a healthy way. But it has some interesting views of things. I mean, even LeBron needs 4 other people to pass him the ball.
Well, I think this is a great place to end it, because we've talked about how, it's a big 3, it's not a big 4, but that 4th guy was pretty darn good. I think one thing we can all agree on, though, is that when it comes to off-the-court contributions, it might as well be a big 4, because Andy Murray has been on the money on social issues, and he's also just got a really positive personality and a great sense of humor. And I'm sure both of you will have thoughts on this, but to me, Andy Murray off the court, he's right up there.
Oh, he's tremendous with these things. I'm not going to put those other 3 just because they've accomplished more and can more easily garner a platform. I'm not gonna create a big anything around tennis players and their philanthropic. You know what I mean? There are things.
Of course.
There are great many things, for all we know, that tennis players do that we might not even know about. So I don't want to just, and we haven't talked about people like Madison Keys and Coco Gauff and numerous some recent things, Naomi Osaka. Many ways tennis players can use their platform in ways this pandemic is maybe shifting it, and we'll see coming out of the pandemic how that works. But that's a fascinating topic.
That's our first episode, and we hope that you rate and review. We know it's early, and that we're only 1 in, but if you liked what you heard, leave us a rating, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe on YouTube. We'll be on YouTube and we'll be on audio platforms, and we can't wait to bring you more 3